Gentlemen, 2016 has pretty much given us a very interesting look into video game adaptations. We've had Angry Birds, which I thought was kind of a little bit loud and a little bit obnoxious for the most part. But, you know, it is what it is. It made money. So, what can I say? We've had Warcraft, which I thought was actually the start of a good and solid film. But it did kind of please, you know, kind of fans more than general audiences, and I think that was the biggest problem. And then, of course, we got Ratchet and Clank, which was fun to kind of see the nostalgic kind of like characters kind of brought on screen. But it relied a little bit too much on your love for the characters, and it kind of developed a very uninteresting script with very bland and basic kind of plot points. And now we have Assassin's Creed from the director Macbeth, starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard and Michael Kenneth Williams and Jeremy Irons and Brendan Gleeson. My oh my oh my, that sounds like a fantastic cast. Sign me the fuck up. That sounds kind of cool. So, is it good? Is it bad? Does it cure video game itis? I can tell you this right now. No, it does not. So let's get into Assassin's Creed. The biggest problem, I think, with Assassin's Creed, just to begin with, is that it feels like it's trying to be a little bit like a small, almost indie movie, kind of, so to speak. Kind of like Macbeth. And then it's trying to be a little bit like a very accessible, kind of like wider approach to, you know, Hollywood, the general audience, just to begin with. And I feel like they're trying to clash styles a bit. And sometimes it is left with a very uninteresting or very sloppy type of product. And I feel like that's kind of what Assassin's Creed is. There's a lot of ambition, and I feel like I appreciate what they're trying to go for and some of the good stuff. But then I feel like when they try to dumb it down, for the most part, a lot of things are just kind of left up into the air. And I feel like that's one of the biggest complaints about Assassin's Creed, the movie. So let's talk about Assassin's Creed, right? I think the biggest complaint about Assassin's Creed, I think, and a lot of people probably say this, is just that the movie focuses a little bit too much on the present time. And I feel like it's not the story per se, it's how the story is kind of told and perceived on screen. Like going back from present and past, that's kind of cool on, you know, on paper or even in a game, but on screen, that shit is kind of fucking dull. And that is the legit truth. They focus about maybe 70% on the future, and then, you know, the rest is pretty much in the past, and that is the worst thing you could possibly done. You could either have dumbed this thing down to the point of just getting rid of the whole Callan Lynch completely, or you could have just simply made it in the past and made an Assassin's Creed movie just like that, because I think that would have been much more interesting. The more interesting parts is definitely in, you know, the 1400s and the Spanish Inquisition. That's the coolest part. That's where the more interesting people are at. The problem with the other side is just that you're kind of left with very bland and uninteresting characters. Callan Lynch and, you know, Jeremy Irons, even Marion Cotillard, and even Michael Kenneth Williams. They are very good actors, and they're acting very good, but they also are playing a part that are very, very underdeveloped, and therefore you just don't really give a shit about the characters, as well as the script doesn't give a shit about the characters. So therefore you both are wondering, the script and you, what the fuck is going on? Because that's kind of like what the movie does to a T. And it doesn't really explain that much. Yes, the movie does kind of have a lot of exposition for the most part, and I think it does a solid job of not making too much in your face, but for the most part, the film's kind of just setting up the premise. That's pretty much what it is. The entire film is basically setting up the premise, and that's fine for the most part, but I feel like that's really where the movie kind of loses you a bit. It's kind of like a tailing mission. You're kind of following the shit, and you're kind of like a little bit interested. You're following the movie, whatever it may be, in the 1492 stuff. That's awesome. Then you kind of lose it because it goes back to the pretty much the future. And then that's kind of where the movie kind of falls into the boring and then the uninteresting, and nothing is really happening there. Yes, they're kind of talking, and boy, do they talk. And it's just not really that great. Now, I will say this, the ambition really comes in the action scenes. I think the action scenes are actually quite good. Granted, the cinematography does look like it's kind of covered in brown shit and constant dust. But that's kind of what they're trying to go for, and I don't blame it. It looks good. The movie is like a visual blowjob, and that's great because it looks really well done. The action scenes are actually really well done. Sometimes the editing seems like it's a little bit off, and sometimes the action scenes look like I can't really understand what's going on, and sometimes even in the story I don't understand what's going on. I even think Fassbender said, "What the fuck is going on?" at one point. So I find it interesting that these actors are doing a really good job in a script that is just kind of lackluster. There's a lot of shit that's just kind of explained, but never really gone into deep detail to the point where it's either that they're saving it for a sequel, or they just didn't really develop it at all, and then it's just kind of left up in the air, and I feel like that's the sad part. Everybody else, like I said, for the cast, they do a really good, or they do a solid job, not a really good job. Most characters are not even really doing much. Even Michael Kenneth Williams, which is great at pretty much anything he's in, especially when he's Omar, you know, from The Wire. He's not really doing shit. Marion Cotillard is pretty much practically playing, you know, Helen Bonham Carter from Terminator Salvation minus the fucking egghead. And, you know, Jeremy Irons is pretty much playing, you know, Jeremy Irons with his very growly voice. That's pretty much it. You don't really get much here. You get cool action scenes, you get cool cinematography, and that's pretty much it. But the film is contained, I feel like, by making the movie just kind of dumb and just a little bit boring for its own good. It's trying to do, I don't know who wanted what, whether it be, the studio wanted this movie to kind of be like, hey, how about you kind of take the stuff more in like the present day and explain it there and do less of the, the subtitle stuff, do like that. That'd be a lot more interesting. If they thought that, they're completely wrong. And I don't really know what to say about this movie because I feel like they really shitted the bed quite badly by not putting it in the past, as I said. Overall, the movie is entertaining enough, but it is not like a popcorn type of movie, even though it tries to be. But then it tries to be, like I said, a little bit like Macbeth and a popcorn movie. And sometimes it doesn't really work out that well. Sometimes you get laughable stuff that is not meant to be laughable. But with dull characters and a very kind of like sloppily told story, you're just kind of like wondering what's going on, what's happening, and then you're kind of just like left uninterested. I appreciate the references to the video game and the leap of faith and all that whatnot, and that's cool. But there's nothing really more to say about this film except that it's just kind of a drag to really watch. And I've seen people that have done, walkthroughs, blindfolded and, whatever it may be, that are probably more interested in probably doing that. People can watch walkthroughs of a game and probably be more entertained by someone playing a game than someone watching, someone pretty much make a video game adaptation. But that's just my thought, if that made any sense, which probably didn't. But either way, that's my thought. Assassin's Creed, it's not really that great. I thought it actually would have been a really good job by the director of fucking Macbeth. But he let me down. The cast let me down, and then again, you can almost kind of blame Fassbender because this guy's actually kind of boring in the movie, except when he's in, 1492, but he's also a producer, so who's to blame here? Who's really to blame? Comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out. And I guess this video game itis is not cured, but as they say, as Freddie Mercury once said, another one bites the dust. Comment, subscribe, and like. Once again, I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.